of Russia and the Ukraine conflict. What's your
My opinion, I grew up in 40 years, under the Russian thing. And I love Putin. I love Putin. Putin is making the right, what the American people is built over there. He wants to clean them out,
He wants to get rid of Americans? Clean them out?
Clean them out, all the biochemical place, everything, and the nuclear thing. Yeah.
We'll have to talk more about this because
He's a good president, Number 2 after President 1. Number 2. I love him.
All right, so that supporter of former President Donald Trump was not actually talking about poutine or anything like that, which apparently is a dish that is beloved in Canada and other places. No, she was actually talking about how she loves the dictator of Russia. Yeah. So now this is part of a series of videos posted by commentator Ron Filipowski at a Trump rally. So before I go into more videos, because there's a lot more, there's more fun, right? Let me just note how it is so bizarre that so many MAGA people love Vladimir Putin. I mean, okay, it's very, very strange. Putin was a former KGB officer or agent in the Soviet Union, right? Now he's a corrupt oligarch whose opponents seem to mysteriously, fall through windows or, yes, polonium. Weirdly, although I'm sure that's just an accident. Yes, just very much an accident. But look, like the irony of the America First people loving the Russian president, that's kind of bizarre, really. It's super, super weird. Now, here's the thing, though. A lot of people, unfortunately, tend to conflate Putin with the Russian people. So let me just say this. Don't hate Russian people. Russian people are not bad people. They're people, just like anyone else. There's good people, there's bad people, there's people with crappy beliefs, there's people with great beliefs, right? And so let me just note that it's kind of gross that I hear some people that are on the left or some more, I guess, more establishment centrist libs that are in favor of blocking Russian refugees from trying to flee the country. Now, they're fleeing the country to try to avoid being drafted into Putin's disastrous war, his invasion into Ukraine. And so there are people that are like, oh, no, good, they could stay. They could go there and fight in that war. Yeah. Wait, no, that's not good. No, they're trying to escape the war to get away from having to fight the war for Putin. They don't want to serve Putin. Okay, so anyway, look, let me just note that Russian people, again, they're not bad because there are a lot of amazing Russians who stood up against Putin, who have demonstrated against Putin, who have protested against the war and the invasion and have fought back against Putin. So now these people have been arrested, they've disappeared, they've been subject to brutal crackdown after brutal crackdown by the regime. And that's the issue here. The Russian government is the problem. Putin is a problem. By the way, let me just also talk about this kind of in the same vein of the right-wing government of Israel, bad. The Israeli people, lovely, wonderful, for the most part. And of course, there are unfortunately those who agree with the right-wing politics. And, I think they're wrong when they, treat Palestinians as if they're not human beings. And of course, you can also criticize, and you can take these criticisms, and by the way, and say, the leaders of the Palestinians, for example, also garbage. Like Hamas, garbage. Okay? Putin, garbage. So let me be fair about that, right? So now that said, back to right-wingers, they want a dictator. They want a Putin in America. And here in America, they see the Putin as Donald Trump. So that's why they love him. They love Putin. All the things they yell about liberals, wanting power and just wanting to control your life. Understand what that is. That's projection. That's them. That said, let's get to another clip, right? And this is a little bit more fun. This is talking to more Trump supporters.
Trump is the first president since Reagan that actually cares about this country. He's not in it for money. He's already a self-made millionaire. He doesn't do it for money. He's the only person that's not a career politician that's actually really cared and try and fix everything that's wrong, from all the bad trade deals with China, boosting our military, bringing God back. I mean, Trump's been phenomenal in my mind as far as what he's done.
Do your research. Even if you say you're a liberal, a Democrat, it doesn't mean you're a socialist. You are old school Democrats probably. Do the deep dive, do the research, and make up your mind not based on who's telling you what. Make up your own mind. Look at the facts. Stop listening to the talking heads. Use your brain, research.
We put the bioweapon labs under Obama, and Obama said, oh yeah, we'll give up the nukes and we got your back. We helped cause this with Ukraine under Obama. So I understand why Russia's in there doing what they're doing with the whole denazification of the Donbass region, because so many Ukrainian nationalists seem to be full-blown Nazis these days. A lot of the media I've seen come out of the Russians taking POW, these guys got swastikas all over them tattooed. And I'm like, well, our media doesn't like to play that, though. It's really interesting how that works.
All right. Let me just say, it's amazing they had to work in
Obama.
Oh, it's Obama's fault. That's what it is. It's Obama's fault. He did this. Okay. I mean, whatever, man. So let's start with the irony. There was a lot of it. But let's start out with that woman saying, do your research. And then followed up by the man who apparently did do his own research and came up with things that are just patently not true. Things that are actual, literal Russian propaganda. That's not to say that there isn't Western propaganda. That's not to say there isn't Ukrainian propaganda. Of course, every government does propaganda, which is why us as normal people, we need to exercise caution over, narratives that will come from certain places, certain governments. For example, treat like Russian stuff that comes out of the Russian government or the Chinese government the same as you would treat the State Department, because understand, all those, they're going to put out propaganda, right? That's going to advance their own particular narratives for their own, obviously, goals. And so you got to really kind of use critical thinking and suss the facts out. That said, when you look, you realize there are no bioweapons labs in Ukraine. There are bio labs. Those are not the same thing. Understand, Ukraine has not been developing biological weapons. That is not the reason that they were invaded by Putin. Again, no evidence of biological weapons, but understand that narrative is part of the Russian propaganda campaign to try to justify their invasion, which really, again, this is kind of a land grab. And then, of course, there's the denazification. Well, I mean, I hate Nazis. You hate Nazis, right? I mean, we all hate Nazis. Theoretically, right? I mean, well, turns out not everybody hates Nazis. Turns out the neo-Nazis at the Unite the Right rally, do you remember them? The ones who chanted Jews won't replace us, blood and soil, etc. In fact, one of their number even struck and killed a leftist activist named Heather Heyer with his vehicle. You remember those? Well, Donald Trump said that there were good people on both sides. Good people on the neo-Nazi side. And so when you look at that and you try to square it with that guy saying, oh, we got to we're going to denazify Ukraine. There's so many Nazis there. Okay, well, it's weird because Nazis seem to favor one end of the political spectrum far more than the other. And do you wonder why? Well, the right is pro-military, pro-Christian nationalism, and very anti-Semitic. We've seen more than enough examples of that. Anti-trans, anti-gay, anti-immigration. So that's the right wing, and also happens to be some policies of the Nazis. And yet this guy claims to be on the side of denazification in Ukraine. Well, hey, if you hate Nazis, like every good American citizen should, well, you might want to look at your own side, which happens to be, well, let's just say that they happen to have their own Nazi problem. Instead of focusing on Ukraine, who, by the way, were there Ukrainian Nazis? Was there the Azov Battalion? Yeah. Yes, that existed. Does the existence of the Azov Battalion make every Ukrainian a Nazi? No. No, it doesn't. That said, look, Putin's war is unjustified. It needs to end. There's a massive loss of life and destruction for literally no reason. None at all. But that said, let me get to what creates this. These, as some of you point out, alternative facts, right? Well, U.S. media and how untrusted it is. And by the way, for good reason. There's a legitimate reason to distrust U.S. media, corporate media. A lot of it is, as I mentioned before, it's propaganda. Outlets will, for example, take State Department press releases and pass them off uncritically as 100% fact. Well, the State Department said, okay, but the State Department is wrong. Look, a good example of that is we had the majority of people in 2003 believe that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction and that he was working with Al Qaeda, which not true at all. Not true at all. And yet there were tons of people, thanks to U.S. media, that were lied into supporting the invasion of Iraq, which was an absolute debacle. And so, yes, that is a good example how U.S. media lied and let people down and did not give factual information. And so, look, that example, and there are many others, of how U.S. media has rightly earned distrust from a lot of people. And as a result, that will, cause some of these people to seek out different sources of information. Now, that could be a good thing. If you can find independent media like, TYT, The Lever, myself, Ring of Fire, The Intercept, there's numerous other wonderful, sources of information, right? And if they find those, that's great. But it can also lead to people finding Alex Jones, Nick Fuentes, or other just insane people, Ben Shapiro. So, yeah, there is an upside, but there's also a gigantic downside to the fact that our corporate media has not been responsible in the past. And, well, you can really see that play out. And not just this, but a lot of these interviews with MAGA supporters.